What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of The Variety Show. Today I will be doing a video on book content. So these are the top 5 books that I have read for 2023 so far. So these books could be categorized as thriller, horror, mystery, suspense. That's kind of my forte. If you already don't know, I have a podcast with my buddy called What Are You Scared of Something? The link to that channel will be in this bio. So I'm going to rank these books from 5 to 1, 5 being the one that I like the least, to 1 being my favorite that I've read so far. Stay tuned for other top 5s of books that I will continue to read for the rest of 2023. I'm trying to read around 35 books, maybe even more, so stay tuned for that. So most of these were audiobooks, and relax, it's really not that different from actually reading a book. If you think so, good for you, but it's really not that much different. It's not less intelligent or anything. You're still consuming it. I'd argue it's even harder sometimes, especially if you're driving or going to sleep or just sitting there and listening. It's hard. I rewind a lot. So coming in at number 5, we have The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. This is a very popular book, one that I've seen in articles, in top thriller books or suspense or mystery books. I see it highly rated on Goodreads. It wasn't my favorite. I liked the way that it was written. I feel like I just expected more. So this is actually not a audiobook that I listened to. This was a physical copy that I read. This was published in 2016, like I said, by Ruth Ware. Her writing is good. It's simple. It's pretty easy to follow. I finished this in a short amount of time. So the synopsis that I'm going to do is not from, an article or some blog. It's going to be right from the top of the dome here. So this book is about a girl named Lo Blacklock. She is a journalist, and her boss sends her on this exclusive cruise to network and meet some famous and rich people. It's a very small cruise, not many people on it. But the book starts out with her house getting broken into by an intruder. So this obviously affects her a lot. She's very distraught by it. Her boyfriend sees her before she goes. She gets into a fight with him, so she is really not in the right mindset. Definitely is intentional, and I think that Ruth Ware wanted the character to not be in a good headspace for what's to come after. The characters are pretty good. They're cool. There's a lot of them, though. At least that's what I thought. And you got to pay close attention to who's who. There's a good amount of dialogue for sure, especially by the main character. So Lo interacts with a person in cabin 10, and it was sort of a strange encounter, and then after this encounter there's nobody there. We find out that no one was ever renting the room is empty, and she's kind of freaking out, like, wait, am I crazy, or did I actually see somebody in there? And the room is totally vacant, and she's trying to figure out who this person is. So later on in the book, during the middle of the night, she hears this loud bang from outside, and she was like, what was that? So she goes and realizes that there's blood on the glass or something like that, but she is 99% sure she heard something or someone go overboard. So basically from here on out is Lo trying to investigate what happened. So she talks to I think head of security on the boat. She talks to one of her friends that she knows in journalism, and she basically goes around and interviews every single person. And you're just trying to figure out who is the woman in cabin 10, and does she have a connection with what she heard. It's pretty good because you're is Lo just hearing things? Is she just seeing things? Because they talk about alcohol, I guess, abuse by Lo. She's on some, antidepressants too, which is a sensitive topic in the book for sure. So obviously I'm not going to give any spoilers away, but the ending was good. I mean, it's like I said, it's well written. I think I just expected more. And I wasn't really blown away by the ending. It was pretty anticlimactic in my opinion. I watched other people talk about it on YouTube, and I kind of went back in the book. I'm like, did I miss something? And I was like, no. But I'm going to give it a 6.7 out of 10. Coming in at number 4, we have House, written by Ted Decker and Frank Peretti. So I looked at the reception of this book, and it is amazing. Very critically acclaimed. A lot of praise for this book. I certainly liked it for sure, but I didn't love it. So this book's a little older. It was published in 2006, and it was narrated by Kevin King. Both of these authors have written a plethora of books, and both of them have books that are series. So they'll have one main character and then write a bunch of books about him. Typical to a James Patterson or Joe Nesbo with Harry Hole, those types of books. Michael Connelly, that type of stuff. I actually like the cover of this book. It's really cool. It doesn't give anything away. It's just a house. Pretty sure it's in the middle of the woods or something like that. So you pick it up and you're like, oh, this like seems pretty intriguing, but it doesn't give anything away. So you're like, this could be about anything. So this is a reasonable read, not too long, not short either. It's about 400 pages, or if you listen to it, it's about 10 hours. So this book is about a couple that is in southern Alabama, and they're on their way to marriage or couples counseling. Their names are Jack and Stephanie, and on their way, they get stopped by this police officer who is doing more than just like a quick search. So right off the bat, it's kind of like hostile. You're kind of on edge. Jack is kind of like arguing with the police officer. He's like, what's going on? Like, why are you, giving me a hard time? I didn't do anything. So after that, they keep driving, and it's towards nighttime, so they're kind of contemplating, do we go back home and just forget this, or do we go through with this because we need marriage counseling? And they end up hitting something in the road, get into an accident. They get out of the car, and they're looking around for help, and they find this big house. So they walk in, it's a bed and breakfast, and nobody's there, and then they find this other couple named Randy and Leslie. So remember, this is 2006, so they're going by a map. They don't have a GPS. They don't have cell phones, so they're trying to find help, and they're going into this bed and breakfast looking for the phone, and that's like some of the first things they say. So anyway, they meet up with this couple, and they realize like nobody's in this hotel / bed and breakfast. And then finally, after talking with the other couple, they realize that other people are there, and these people are weird. Right off the bat, they're like these, no offense, but these really southern people with this twang, this accent. And the audiobook is really good because the narrator does like different accents of male and females. So there's a lady and her 2 sons, and they're really creepy and they're really weird. And Jack and Stephanie, and especially the other couple, Randy and Leslie, Randy and Leslie are trying to figure out why isn't anybody like helping us? We want to stay here. And the other couple's just trying to find help. And that little aspect of trying to get help is harder than they think. So the owners of the house, they have dinner, and everything just kind of like shit hits the fan. They make them really uncomfortable, and then obviously I'm not going to give anything away, but stuff starts to go down. And the more I think about it, the more I like the book. I enjoyed it for many reasons. One of the things I didn't love is that there's a lot of dialogue, which obviously it's a book, but there's a lot of back and forth, and there's a few characters. There's like 5 or 6 main characters that you're dealing with. I feel like some of the conversations weren't like needed as much. They could have been sped up a little, so you have to pay very close attention. Things also change fairly quickly. You're just like, wait a minute, what? Again, I had to rewind a lot. This book is pretty comedic at times. It's definitely, appropriate comedic timing for sure. You become very attached to these characters, especially ones individually. You're kind of growing with the characters throughout the story, whether that's, positive or negative. You'll have to find out for yourself. Great character development, and there's a aspect of the book, mainly at the end, that I liked a lot, and there's one character in particular that I like a lot. So, the ending's good. It's just, nothing crazy where I'm just like, oh my god. I was like, oh, that's good. I like that. And again, none of these books I hate. I just like some less than others. I enjoyed this storyline overall. The ending is pretty relatable to life. There's biblical references in there that are pretty clever. I also like that it's not predictable. I can't stand when a book is predictable. You're like halfway through, you're like, I know the ending. The writers are pretty solid. I understand why they've written so many books. They do it pretty easily. But I'm going to give this book a 7.7 out of 10, which I think is a pretty good score. And I'm definitely interested in reading some of their books in the future for sure. Coming in at number 3, we have The Book of Accidents. And this book is very, very highly acclaimed. 4, sometimes 5 stars reviews and ratings throughout the internet that I've seen. So this is nominated for a Bram Stoker Award for superior writing in horror. So I found this book by using the filter on Libby, if you have that, or Audible, and you could just filter by category, and I think I did thriller and horror. I also checked the ratings of the books for sure. I'm most likely not going to read a book that's 3 stars and below, just because I'm like, why waste my time? So this book was published in 2021, written by Chuck Wendig. I'm pretty sure I said that right. Again, this is my synopsis. So this one is long. The audiobook was about 20 hours, so you have to pay very close attention. Many details. There's a lot of twists and turns from the immediate start to the immediate finish. So you have to be in it the entire time. So some quick notes. There's a tad bit of smut in this. It's not my favorite, but it's in there. So, take it or leave it. The author also gives some of his own political views, quite a bit during it. So there's that. I feel like I could have done without. Again, like House, there are some biblical references that are really clever, and I feel like religion and horror movies or books go hand in hand a lot. So these references are a major part of the book. They're clever. It's a rather fulfilling theme of the book. There's a quick mention of Dracula, which is pretty cool. And from the authors that I've read, especially horror books, they'll pay homage to Dracula. So you might not understand it if you haven't read it or at least seen the movies. So I'm kind of back and forth on the ending. The more that I think about it, I think the more that I like it. But again, this is right in the middle at number 3 in the top 5 books that I have here. I thought the ending was good. I didn't love it. I kind of wanted something else to happen. If I were to write it, I would switch it in a certain way. You'll have to read for yourself. But I loved the writing of the book for sure. I mean, you could tell the author is professional. The author took his time, and I was pretty hooked the entire time. That's probably why I was like slightly disappointed, because you're just like, okay, you're building up, and then it ends, you're like, okay, all right. The different character narrations are pretty amazing. It's one of the best parts about audiobooks is that you have these professionals, most of them are like actors, whether they're on Broadway or they do audiobooks for a living, or they're in movies or TV shows, and they do this because they're very professional, and they do different accents and things like that, so it's very enjoyable. So I'm going to give this an 8.1 out of 10, which I think is a great score. Like I said, the book is excellent, and it captivates you, and it's a long book. It's sort of like an epic. It's hard to describe. It's an epic. It's like big, it's like massive. Like I said, it's biblical. Like something like, Gone with the Wind or Titanic or Ben-Hur, those like long movies, This is like a long book, and there's a lot that goes on with it. It's just, otherworldly in a way. So coming in at number 2, we have Dracula by Bram Stoker. So the book before Book of Accidents was a Bram Stoker Award nominee. This book was written in 1897 by Bram Stoker. I don't know what came into my mind when I wanted to read this book. I feel like I wanted to kind of go back to the origins of horror and read a classic. And I feel like everybody should read this, and it was great because I've never seen any Dracula movies. I didn't even know if I was like a vampire fan. I am a little more now, but I feel like everybody should read this, especially if you're a fan of horror or vampires, or both. So be prepared to read or listen for a long time. This book, like the book before, is about 20 hours, or if you're reading it, it's about 420 pages, I believe. So this book is very clever because it is written by memoirs or journals. Dr. Seward's diary, Mina Harker's journal. The style is just fantastic and really cool. It's also great because it's refreshing, and it's more interesting to hear a book or read a book by multiple characters, by their different accounts. You're not just getting one point of view from a character. And the narrators are incredibly talented and impressive. They do multiple accents. The male, J.P. Guimont, sorry if I mispronounced that, Guimont, does, I believe, an American accent, a Transylvania accent, a Dutch accent, a British accent. It's incredible. Tavia Gilbert does multiple accents as well, and her British accent is just so pure and just so crisp. It's incredible. So if you don't know the YouTube channel Sam and Colby, there's these two guys that go to, abandoned or famous haunted places, and they actually go to Dracula's castle. And they give a quick lesson on how Bram Stoker was inspired to write this book. So there was a guy named Vlad the Impaler, or Vlad Dracula, who in like the 1400s or something like that would impale his enemies, and some say he would eat lunch near them and possibly drink their blood. So Bram Stoker kind of, got that idea and was inspired to write the book. So the book is about a man named Jonathan Harker. So he's sent to Transylvania to Dracula's castle because Dracula wants to move to London. So, of course, Harker doesn't know that he's a vampire, but he quickly figures it out and becomes a prisoner. So I don't want to say too much, but Jonathan writes to his wife and to his boss that he's doing okay when he really isn't, because Dracula wants to make believe that he's doing all right. Meanwhile, he wants to keep him prisoner. So I don't want to say too much, but a bunch of characters try to come together and defeat evil, which is Dracula. And I love this book for many reasons. One, it starts off and you already know, wow, this is a classic. The way it's written, the characters, the way they're written, and the characters were just so nice, and they were just, basically risking their lives for a better cause. And they were just all nice to each other, and they were just, loved each other. Like, Dr. Van Helsing is probably the most uplifting and positive character in literature. They were just very good-hearted people, which was refreshing to read. It's just a perfect book. Like the first time you watch Back to the Future, like, wow, this is a perfect movie. Just everything in this goes well, and 99% of people like it. It's like Tony Finau, the golfer. I can't see why you wouldn't like him. He's just a great guy, and you always root for him. So, of course, after this, there were many movie and TV show adaptations about this. Bram Stoker's Dracula in the 90s with Gary Oldman and Winona Ryder. There was one in the 30s, which was in black and white. You know, that's like the famous pictures that you see if you look up Dracula. The movie, what is that? Twilight. Those movies, I've never seen that, but that's definitely an inspiration for it. Vampire Diaries with Nina Dobrev. So I highly, highly, highly recommend this. Like I said, if you're a fan of horror, if you're a fan of literature, if you're a fan of vampires, it's just a great book. So overall, I'm going to give this a 9.3 out of 10. So coming in at number 1, we have The Silent Patient. And this is a book that is critically acclaimed everywhere on Goodreads, on Facebook, Instagram. If you just do a Google search of thrillers / mystery books, this one is almost always ranked in the top 5. So it won the Goodreads Choice Award in 2019. Twilight, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Divergent, those are other winners of this award. So I loved this book. It's just incredible. The ending, the way it's written, you're just hooked the whole time. So this book, unlike others that I've read, you're with it the whole time, and then you're like, boom! Just complete shocker, surprise. And if anybody says that they predicted the ending, you should become a detective, because I did not see it coming. I think there was a small inkling that I knew what it was going to be, but not really. So here's my synopsis. So the book starts off with a narrator that is just talking, but we don't really know who he is at first. So he quickly starts off by talking about this lady named Alicia Berenson, who murdered her husband, and she has yet to talk since murdering him, and it's been, I think, months or years. And this guy has become fascinated and enamored with this story that he is a psychotherapist already, but he weaves his way into working at the Grove and trying to get her to talk. So Theo is our main character. He is very intrigued by this whole story. He gets the job, and he starts to interview her and get her to talk. Of course, right away, she doesn't. And it's interesting because he's a psychotherapist, but he starts acting like a detective. So he starts to interview people in her life to figure out what happened and why she is not talking. And when I say not talking, she is mute. Hasn't said a word since she murdered her husband. So basically that's all I'll say, because I don't want to give anything away, but there are a lot of twists and turns, and you're along for the ride. So it's listed as in the genre of thriller and suspense, and it's definitely suspenseful. So Jack Hawkins and Louise Brealey are the narrators, and Louise reads many other books, and so does Jack, but Louise reads The Girl on the Train, which is a very popular book. And they keep you hooked the entire time. They are incredible narrators. You have basically no idea what's going on, and you want to know so bad why this girl isn't talking, which is great because you will finish the book. And then you will be surprised, and then you'll be like, wow, this was amazing. I've heard some people say it's slow. Alex Michaelitis, I'm pretty sure that's how you say his name. I'll be reviewing in the next video his book, The Maidens, which I loved. That one is pretty dicey when it comes to the reviews. I personally like his writing. I know another YouTube channel, Possessed by Horror, she does not like the book at all. But that's what's great about art and literature and movies, is that a bunch of people can like it and some people can hate it. Or a bunch of people can hate it and some could like it. These are the best kind of books because these types of books will mention minute details in the beginning or in the middle, and they will come back in the end and play a major part. That's why you have to pay close attention. So the ending is wild. I didn't see it coming. I loved it. I had to rewind it like 3 times just to make sure. I actually remember where I was. I was on the treadmill at the gym, and I was just like, da, 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 da. Wait, what? I literally had to stop and be like, huh? What just happened? I'm surprised I didn't run out of the gym. So I'm going to give this a 9.4 out of 10. It's definitely my favorite book that I've read so far. I got to use the Portnoy pizza method because I can't give it a 10, because if I like something better, what am I going to give it? So it's an incredible read. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. So those are the top 5 books that I've read so far for 2023. Just to recap, coming in at number 5, Woman in Cabin 10. Coming in at number 4, House. Coming in at 3, Book of Accidents. Coming in at number 2, Dracula, and coming in at number 1, The Silent Patient. Stay tuned for the next 5 books that I've read for 2023 so far. That'll be part 2.